Hey folks, Justin McQuerry here, and thank you for tuning in to episode 4 of the In Stride podcast. This is the first of a three-part series of Meet the Founders interviews, and today Alex and I will be interviewing Nathan Bartels to learn a bit more about him and his journey with diabetes from diagnosis all through sport and life so far. If you're finding this podcast interesting or useful, please drop us a like or a follow on any of our social media platforms and check out our website to learn more. On to the episode.
Hey all, thanks for jumping back in here. So over the last few weeks, we've been really focused on talking about Justin and myself's ridiculous venture of racing bikes for 200 miles across a whole lot of gravel. And Nathan has done a whole heck of a lot of interviewing of us. And kind of the realization hit that, we should really talk about him a little bit. He's a really interesting guy, has a lot of experience, and might be kind of it might be kind of interesting to hear about how his diabetes control and his whole life story, let's be realistic, might be wildly different than ours. So, Nathan, you and I have known each other for a really long time. Like it's kind of crazy to think about it. Like I think we met in 2007 in kind of a crappy hotel room in Atlanta where we all went to ride our bikes really hard and still had to figure this whole diabetes thing out. So I don't know. You wanna give a quick intro and talk about you?
Yeah, man. So I remember that you think it was a crappy hotel. I think it was really cool. It was like some boutique hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. I actually forgot about that until you just brought it up. Yeah, I think that was back in 2007, and both of us were on Team Type 1 getting ready for a race across America. And gosh, that was probably, you said 2007, so what is that, 17, 18 years ago? We were getting ready to embark on that really fun adventure. So yeah, that was awesome, man. That's a long time, and yeah, it was a fun way to meet you.
Yeah, it's crazy to think how much time has passed. Like,
I was going to say
honestly,
that's before my first bike race or time on a bike even. So that's pretty incredible.
yeah, and just like thinking about how much we've learned since that point in time, like I'm a wildly different person than those days. I mean, I think I was still in high school then. I was just finishing up high school maybe. So, I honestly have a lot to learn there. But yeah, so over the last 17, 18 years, what's been going on? I know you've had like a recently very big life change.
Well, and what led up to you guys meeting in this hotel room? I'm actually really interested about how you guys ended up in Atlanta in what Alex characterizes as a crappy motel, and Nathan thinks it has some culture to go ride bikes
I,
hard for a little while or a long while.
I could be wrong. I, might have had just like really high blood sugars the entire time, which completely fogs my memory. I don't even know.
It
So
happens that in
he's
the
probably correct. He's probably very nice.
17, 18 years since then. But yeah, I want to know how you guys got there and what led up to that for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that meetup in Atlanta in the hotel room kind of started this whole thing where we really showcased to the world what somebody with type 1 diabetes can do. Before that, my story is just like anybody else's, any diagnosis story where you're given a chronic disease diagnosis as a young kid. I was given that diagnosis when I was 14 years old. I remember it actually pretty well, and it's funny because of the whole bike racing experience. I've had great opportunities to talk to a lot of people with type 1 diabetes, work with different camps and groups, and I've gone around and talked to a lot of physicians and healthcare providers in this space. And everybody has this pretty traumatic experience. Alex, you and I were just on the phone with a gentleman who's done some work in the type 1 diabetes space because his two sons were diagnosed with diabetes, and he had the same story that I hear from everybody else, and that's this: you're hit with a ton of bricks, and your life's kind of derailed for a little while as you try to navigate through the chaos, and it's pretty negative for most people. I remember very clearly when I was 14, I was really lucky, I think. I had a good friend who, oddly enough, also had type 1 diabetes. He was diagnosed probably 3 or 4 years before me. And so I had a good understanding what type 1 diabetes was. The other thing that made my diagnosis story really fortunate is I think it was just the guidance my parents gave me. It was kind of cool because my parents were both entrepreneurs. They were in the restaurant business. And Alex, I don't know if you've ever heard this as a father, but it's less about what you tell your kids and what you show them. And I think this was a really great example. And the reason I bring up my parents being in the restaurant business is because I think it's just the restaurant business is just continuous adversity and how you manage that adversity as a restaurant owner. And so I think from a really young age, I was able to watch my parents navigate adversity and turn problems into solutions and opportunities. And so when I was hit with this diagnosis story, I think two things: my friend that had diabetes, and I understood the disease, what it was, and then my parents' approach to adversity and just like taking it on and like, who cares? Let's just do it. And so I remember, I was really sick. Had the classic story with diabetes in that one. I was going to the bathroom all the time. But one of the funny things is, it's not funny at all, actually, but I remember sitting in my middle school classroom, and I was convinced I was going blind. I remember this drastic vision change, and I remember like, oh shoot, I can't see the whiteboard anymore. And so I like got myself creeping closer and closer to the front of the room. And I got to the front of the room and I'm like, crap, I still can't see the whiteboard. I must be, 14-year-old brain. I must be going blind. This sucks. And then I even convinced myself that I might be dying because of the way I felt. And I was like, well, I guess, it's been a good 14 years. Let's see what's on the other side. And so then I go and I finally got to the point where my parents take me to the hospital. And they're like, oh, you have type 1 diabetes. And I'm like, oh, yes, I'm not going blind. I was stoked. I remember I was like, oh, I know type 1 diabetes. My buddy Ryan has type 1 diabetes. This is cool. I get to like take shots and eat snacks. This is going to be rad. And so like from day one, I just had this weird response to when like what should be terrible news hits. And for whatever reason, my brain just like processes it different. And it's like more of like, okay, I'm on an adventure. This is a new adventure. This is something to get excited about and figure out. And I kid you not, that's the way it felt when I was diagnosed with diabetes. Like, yeah, it sucks. Like, you've got a disease. But there's also this element of like excitement and like, let's do it, approach to it. And like figuring it out and being kind of contrarian and like how to manage it. I remember my mom, again, I think it's my parents, just the way they approached entrepreneurship and restaurants and blah, 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 and turning adversity into advantages. I remember the diet guidelines that I was given in the hospital. And I think it was probably just based on the food triangle or the food pyramid, where it's like tons of carbs, lots of dairies. And my mom was like, this is stupid. Like, I don't understand why my type 1 diabetic son should be pounding pasta and bread and eating all this stuff before bed. And so
that stuff is delicious.
Well, it is. But again, it's like, we totally, like at 14, my mom helped me like flip that food triangle upside down and like, hit the ground running with how I still eat today as an athlete. And it was pretty cool. One of the stories from my childhood, observing my parents, that I think set my trajectory with just taking on adversity and turning it into opportunities. I remember this, one of the restaurants when I was like, 12 years old. I must have been like just before diagnosis. Burned down, caught on fire. Like there was a busboy or a cook smoking in the back and threw a cigarette on like some cardboard boxes or whatever. And the restaurant went on fire and the whole thing burned down. And, I remember like my parents were like, well, the restaurant's in the process of being rebuilt. Let's go on a ski trip. And so we got out of town, went skiing for a week. And I was just like, oh, wow, we took this opportunity of like being out of work and went and did something fun with the family. And so I think that like mindset that they instilled to me of like, oh, hey, something crappy happened. Let's go like make something great happen out of it. Just kind of stuck. And then that built as, diabetes hit, and I was able to have more wins along the way with my diabetes, with sports, first in high school, then later with cycling.
All right. So that all sounds like, right, like your parents set you up for a whole lot of like a really good mindset, right? But I know for myself, right, I was diagnosed a few years younger than you. And then I became, frankly, a pain in the ass teenager that like just hated diabetes and like tried to do like a whole lot of rebellion. Did you manage to just like completely avoid going through that kind of stage? I mean, I know that I had like the experience of going to the endo a handful of times, just being like, yo, what are you doing? Like, you're gonna kill yourself if you don't get this under control. Like, how did you manage to avoid all that, or did you not?
Man, that's a good question. I see that a lot with kids, right? So I think with me, I don't know what happened. I don't know if I was in a really long Dom phenomenon where I just like, or what was it called? No, that's not right. Where you have working islet cells for a while.
The honeymoon
What's that
phase.
called?
Honeymoon.
Honeymoon. Yeah. I think I had like a really long honeymoon because I remember for like the first, I don't know, man, from 14 all the way through high school, I think. I feel like my blood sugars were just kind of wired and I didn't have to think about it much. Like I had to think about it enough to understand insulin delivery and what food does to the body. But I remember very clearly that it just like my blood sugars were always pretty solid. And I think what that helped me do is just not really think about it much, honestly. And I remember like in high school, I was there and my friends knew I had it, but it was really in the back. I didn't bring it as a forefront, like as an important part of my lifestyle until probably college and bike racing and really becoming competitive in sports, which helped me kind of view it as like, okay, wait a second, this is something I have to have incredibly dialed in core in order to like reach the goals I have in sport. And so I think I just got lucky. I don't know. I didn't ever have that rebellious phase that I know a lot of teenagers have when managing diabetes, and they're told, you got to do this or you can't do that. And it might have been too that like I was given a lot of autonomy right from the get go. Like, hey, this is yours. It's up to you. My parents would kind of check in on me a little bit, but for the most part, they just kind of stayed out of my way. And I think that helped too, because I was never micromanaged by anybody. I was never told, hey, you got to do it this way or you got to do that. And it was really just something that was in the background for a very long time. And like I said, it's something that I don't really think about diabetes all that often until I have to, or until I want to like really excel in something or really like utilize it and make sure it's really dialed in. And so that was like, I don't know, it was just the way through high school as well. I mean, there's always times where you're just pissed at it and you're like, you should go away, but haven't had too many of those super lows where you're just kind of depressed by it.
Well, I mean, all right. So I'm actually this brings up a thing I'm super curious about. Right? Is you said you don't really think about diabetes until you have to think about it, but I know like Justin and I are both on these like closed loop systems, at least to some degree. But I think you're doing things like wildly different, right? Like where you actually have to take an active approach with that.
Well, yeah, and especially early in your diagnosis too, where I can imagine
Yeah,
it was all manual.
I mean, I maybe misspoke a little bit on that. So I think it's in the background as far as like stressing me out. It doesn't. It's just kind of in the background. But so one of the things that, um, especially once I got through that long honeymoon period and started bike racing, and I was still on finger sticks, testing my blood sugar. I mean, I would test constantly, and it's like I have this Apple Watch, right now because the only reason I have this Apple Watch on, I honestly don't even like it that much. If Apple wants to sponsor me, I'll change that. We can go and edit that. But it's because of this thing right here. It's got my numbers right on my wrist, and it's because I always want to know exactly where my blood sugars are, and so I'm always looking at it. I'm always paying attention. But it's just part of driving the car. It's just part of like making sure I have gas in the tank, making sure that like the insulin balance is right. And so I'm always engaged with what's going on. There's always like a computer program running in the back of my brain that's like, okay, you just ate this thing and the results of that's going to be this, or hey, you haven't exercised today, so your insulin sensitivity might be a little bit low and you might be running higher blood sugars because of that. All right, have a 350 blood sugar reading, like what happened? I'm always thinking about like the things that led up to it. And so I'm always processing, but it really is something that's not like creating great stress in my life. I mean, another funny story, and my wife's this way too. My wife, like, we go through our life, like, I mean, I'm not sure she knows I have diabetes. I mean, I know she does, but the way the way it's a part of our life, it's in the background. It's something I'm always very engaged with and always trying to tweak and always trying to improve, but it's nothing that like gets in the way. And maybe that's what I was trying to explain is that my diabetes never gets in the way. Diabetes management, yeah, my protocol. So,
Well, hold
I
on.
think that was the actual question. I think that was the actual question.
It was, but holding on real quick, Justin, I think we're going to have a bad time here. I got a glimpse at Nathan's Apple Watch, and like it was a little blurry on the camera,
Yeah.
but I think we're going to lose the little blood sugar battle by the end of this recording.
Mine's actually been pretty solid today, so I might be giving Nathan a run for his money. But I was going to say Nathan's approach to diabetes from a young age, like it's yeah, you didn't view it as an adversity, you viewed it as a part of you, and by saying you weren't like I'm interpreting this very similar to my own diagnosis, which we can get into at a later point for sure. But it from from day one, you it's a part of you, and unfortunately, we don't have an option. But if you learn to live with that, and like you're while you are always tuned in, it's not something you have to act on every second of every day, and you're able to like nuance what you do in your life and what you do with your diabetes management to make it all work in stride, pun intended, um, because that's just the way you think about it. And I think that's an incredible way to be able to achieve kind of whatever you want, and is why you are Nathan today. I think. Yeah, you said you started pursuing sport like out of high school as well. I'm interested in that and how that led into cycling. And again, I want to lead back to this hotel room in Atlanta. I want to know how you guys got there.
Yeah. So first, let's get into the way I manage my diabetes, because I think that's where we're at right now in this conversation. And so I know Justin and Alex, you guys both are on closed loop systems. I think different pumps. What pumps are you guys on? Are you guys? You're on.
I'm on Tandem, Tandem T
Yeah, you're on.
Slim something or other. But yeah,
Yeah, Alex, what pump do you use?
So I've got the Omnipod Dash, but the controller is that open source.
Yeah,
Closed
yeah. So I've used a lot of pumps. I love the Omnipod. Back in 2007, Alex, we're going back to that hotel room. I think I was introduced to the Omnipod, and it was like just blow your mind, like just awesome. The have a tubeless pump just was like the coolest thing ever.
The Freestyle Navigator, which that might even not even like register in your mind.
I've heard of it. I've heard of it in name only. I don't have any
that thing,
experience.
that thing was revolutionary, man. That thing was awesome. Going back 18 years using CGM, like the Navigator, which is the precursor to the current day Libra. And it was freaking awesome. I remember, so I was racing. This is a funny story. So I was racing bikes with Phil Sutherland, founder of Super Sapiens and Team Type One, Team Nova Nordisk, and we were. This was before the Navigator. We got access to the Navigator, and Joe Eldridge, and myself, and I think like Bob Trank, we would like drive around in these like minivan, and we were just obsessively testing our blood sugar with these little freestyle one touch ultra test strips. And it got to the point where it was just an absolute disgusting. Like the floor of our minivan as we were driving around with these bike racers were just covered. They were in the little cup holders of the car. They were in the little like side components. It was truly disgusting. There was like thousands of these things. And a little caveat, we did have a sponsorship from Abbott. And so we had like boxes of freestyle strips. And so one of the things we understood, and this is what CGM has really revolutionized in diabetes management, is you have to get a grip on where your blood sugars are going. So back in the day, Justin, before, way in the old days, 17 years ago, before CGMs, your insurance would pay for like 4 tests a day. You get like enough test strips to test your blood sugar like 4 times. And it was just crap. You wouldn't know like where you were going, where you've been. It was just an awful way to try to manage the disease. And so we got access to just like thousands of test strips. And so we would like be on our way to bike races, just obsessively testing like every 5 minutes to catch where we were trending. And so, like I said, this is like car was just littered in test strips. We just like couldn't like keep up with it. And then we got access to these CGMs, and we're like, oh my god, there's an arrow. It tells me that I'm 120, but I'm headed up. So instead of like if you just took a screenshot, just took a blood glucose reading, you would be 120. You don't know if you're 120 going to 300 or 120 going to 50. And so for an athlete, for bike racing, you have to test 2 hours out, then you have to test an hour and a half out. And as you got closer, you have to, get those spacings to like 15 minutes apart. So you understood not only where you were, but where you were trending into those races. And then, like I said, CGMs came out, the Abbott Freestyle Navigator, and that thing had trend arrows, and it was just like the coolest thing that happened for a type 1 diabetic.
Dude, I remember telling my endocrinologist at one point through that blood sugar testing and like trying to figure it out with racing. I was like, yeah, I test roughly 20 times a day. And they just looked at me like I was insane. Like, what are you talking about? I feel like, but that's what we had to do, right? Because you had no idea. Like, get to the start of a crit, and you're like, well, if I don't know where I'm headed,
Yeah,
great.
you don't know, and that's the point of it. You can't predict and make decisions for where you're going to be during the 60-minute crit if you don't know, you don't have an educated idea of where you're going to be. But yeah, no, I was pretty late to the CGM adoption. I'd say mostly due to insurance, and so those days of cars, apartments, hotel rooms, the house, my diabetes monitor case just being littered with used test strips is not lost on me at all.
Yeah, so that kind of the insurance hurdle is definitely an issue, and definitely one of the components to why I'm on multiple day injections. So I was going to say, I was introduced to the Omnipod back in 2007. Awesome pump, tubeless, super cool. Have used the closed loop systems, again, awesome, super cool. Right now, I don't have employer paid health insurance. I do like a Crowd Health is actually the name of the insurance that I use. It's an Austin-based company here, and it's rad. But it's you pay for your supplies out of pocket, and you try to find coupons, and you try to do the whole thing. I will, without a doubt, as you guys probably have already figured out, I won't go without a CTM. So I do just pay the discounted coupon rate for Dexcom G7s. I've used Abbott Libres as well. I'm actually not the only reason. So here's the thing. I love Abbott's products. I'm not like plugging, I'm not sponsored by anybody. The only reason I'm on Dexcom's product is because it has a direct sensor to my watch. I don't have to have a phone on to get that reading. And I want this reading on my wrist all the time because right now I'm 93 and I want to be able to catch when I'm 93 starting to trend up, because then I can take a 1 unit insulin correction and bring it back down to 93. Or vice versa, if I start to trend down, I catch it sooner. And I know this is not advised. I think there's even like healthcare providers that say don't micromanage it, but I think that's silly. It's like I want to just micromanage the crap out of it. You have to understand that there's a lag, right? So CGM is reading the interstitial fluid, which is about a 15-minute delay from your blood glucose reading. And so you have to realize there's a 15-minute lag in that reading. And then also there's a lag in how long it takes for your insulin to start working, or how long it takes for your food to actually be metabolized and make corrections. So there's like a feel that you have to develop over time. I think you only develop that feel by paying very close attention. And having the blood sugar on my wrist is a big part of understanding of acquiring that feel. Just seeing it all the time, being totally engaged with your numbers, understanding all the little factors, the foods, the stressors, the exercise, how those little nuances affect your metabolism, your blood sugars.
I think that's it's a really unique approach, just like hearing you say it out loud, right? Because for me, I'm 100% the opposite. But I surmise that like we have different approaches, but probably have a similar level of like overall control, right? If we assume that your A1C is probably better than my A1C, but like, it's a nuanced value, right? But like, it really just kind of, to me, speaks to the differences in all the individuals, but how, if we use the tools that are available to us, we can all find success in our own ways, right? Like, I know for a fact that if I spend all of my time, and I say all of my time, that's putting words in your mouth, right? But like, if I spend a whole lot of time stressing about my blood sugars and things like that, I burn out really quickly, which then I need to take like a couple of months to recover from. So I have found, like, for me, the way to just let it fade to the background and like let the technology kind of just handle it, and it's worked out great. And it's been like the best control I've had in my life over the last 4 years, where I feel like I'm spending less time doing it. But also when training for Unbound, like we talked about, right? Like I was very focused on like, this happens here when I have 120 grams carbs an hour. But I know for me, if I had been, micromanaging it that whole time, I wouldn't be interested or have like the mental capacity, right, to like think about it on the bike. So it's just, it's something I've been thinking about a lot just in general of like, how different people look at like the micro nuances or the macro situation of different things. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not really a question.
That's an interesting comment, because like it does sound like I'm like super type A and micromanaging it, but like I mentioned earlier in this podcast, is that it is just it's like background. I keep using these like car analogies. We might dig into it a little bit. One of the analogies I think is great is that type 1 diabetics are driving manuals, and non-diabetics are stuck with a crappy automatic. But that analogy worked really well for me, and it's kind of like the way I approach my micromanagement of like looking at my numbers all the time, or at least having them on my wrist, and doing MDI, which is definitely more of a manual approach than what you guys are doing with your closed loop system. Is that it's like a gas gauge on your car. It's like it's there, when your gas is empty, but it's not stressing you out, right? It's background. It's just there as a tool to kind of help you navigate your driving experience. And that's the way I view my numbers as well. It's like I'm not stressed by them. Sometimes I'm stressed by them if like I'm just stressed and I'm having high blood sugars, and you're just like but for the most part it's not. It's just like a gas gauge in your car. It's there to be an aid, and I don't really think about it that much. It's like almost, I think it's like autopilot. I think I'm just like looking at it and I'm like, oh, I'm 87 and I'm trending down, and maybe I'll go have an apple or something and start to trend it back up. And honestly, that's kind of where it's not really micromanaging. It's just always kind of part of just paying attention and being engaged in the disease state. So we should get into the rest of the way I manage my diabetes, because
Yeah.
people are probably like, well, what do you do? And so I am on multiple day injections, and I use a basal insulin called Lantus, and a fast acting insulin. I use Humalog. I think they're all the same. Humalog, Pedra, whatever. They're all kind of the same. One of the things I
Well,
one
the big difference is which one is cheapest.
Yeah, which one your insurance pays for, or which one you can get your coupon for. So there is, for Humalog, there is a you can just go to their site, and if you don't have insurance, I think it's like $400 a month for a supply of for a month of insulin. But you can get a coupon so it's $25 a month, and so insulin's pretty cheap. And so that's what I do. And one of the things that really, before the insurance issue became a thing, I still chose to do multiple day injections. And one of the reasons that I did that was because, one, I was having a lot of pump occlusions at that time. And so I was getting really frustrated with just the technology itself and the random highs from occlusions, Justin. And the listeners, if you listen to the last podcast, you will fully understand what I'm talking about. Occlusions happening at the wrong time. You can go back and listen to Justin's experience at Unbound, where he had an occlusion right after the race started, and it sucked. And so that was one of the reasons I switched to multiple day injections. I knew that, like, okay, I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to take my basal insulin, and it's on board. I know I have it. And so I really like that peace of mind. And then the main thing that I like about it is, so running fast acting insulin through a pump, especially as an athlete, you have got to be really aware of what you're doing, and you have to be able to manage your delivery when it comes to sports, because when you start to exercise with fast acting insulin on board, your body becomes really sensitive to that fast acting insulin. What I found with Lantus is I don't really have to change my Lantus dose. For whatever reason, I think it's the way that crystals dissolve in your body. They do not, Lantus does not react the same to exercise as fast acting insulin does. So when we run fast acting insulin through a pump as a basal insulin, you definitely have to, when you're doing like an endurance sport, and so there's a lot of nuance. Intensity is a big factor on how your bodies are going to respond to the insulin. But for the most part, your body's going to be hypersensitive to the fast-acting insulin that's on board. Lantus, you don't have to worry about it so much. You just take your Lantus, you're good to go. You don't have to make micro adjustments around sports. So I really like that element of MDI therapy as well. And then insulin pens are awesome. I mean, these little things are so cool. Like, click it, poke the button, like I can just take insulin throughout the day, and it does not hurt, and it's like so convenient. So between how much I like Lantus when I'm exercising and racing, and the convenience and the affordability of those little insulin pens, I just what's worked for me. I will say I've used closed loop systems, and where they're far superior, and where once the affordability gets a little better and I can get access to them, I probably will actually switch back to a closed loop system because of the nighttime stability. Being able to sleep for 8 hours, and that system just bottoms you out at 90, and you're just 90 all night long, is almost enough right there to switch me over. But for the time being, for all those reasons, costs and reliability, the multiple day injections just still kind of my go-to.
Yeah, I mean, right. That's, you inject insulin, it's going to work.
Yeah, it's on board. You know what it's going to do.
Interestingly, I actually still have my prescription is for insulin pens, and I just like suck it out of the pens.
It's
But
nice to have
like,
it as a backup always.
yeah,
You
I can always carry one with me, and I'll have like
yeah,
two needles in like my toiletry bag, right? If I'm traveling, it's like,
yeah.
oh well, if everything goes to hell, I've got a needle, I can just throw it. I mean,
Yep.
they probably expired 10 years ago at this point, but like, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can have an insulin pen in your pocket on like long training races or rides or whatever, just have one. It's a nice backup for
Yeah,
sure.
I recommend it
Are,
100%.
are we giving Justin some shit about that, or
I know, guys, I know. I'll take it. I deserve it.
Next time, he needs another buddy at the line with type 1 diabetes, so he can be like, dude, got an insulin pen in your pocket? That was included.
just rip it out of someone's pocket. Yeah. Actually, yeah, yeah. It'll be in the pocket for the next one. I'm confident for sure.
yeah, I think
Well,
there
I
was
mean,
a Nova Nordisk guy in your race.
There were two of them. Yeah, we chatted a little bit, but yeah,
Should have robbed him.
I should
Don't
have.
don't actually rob them.
No,
Don't rob
no.
people for their insulin.
Yeah, I feel like
Please.
there's got to be a rule against that in the race manual. So we'll keep it PG for the actual theft going on at races. But I will be well prepared. Mark my words. Mark my words. But yeah, so Nathan, to circle back, how did you get into sport? Were you in sport before you were diagnosed, or did that come after diagnosis?
Man, so I mean, I've always loved the bike, but I wasn't into cycling until after diagnosis. I didn't really get into cycling until college. Really, so my brother got a road bike. I was probably a junior or senior in high school, and he came back from college with a road bike, and I started riding it. I started borrowing it. I was like, oh man, this thing's really fun. And that was like late '90s, early 2000s. U.S. cycling was kind of blowing up. Lance Armstrong was doing his thing over in the tour, and it was just romantic sport. I was really drawn to it. I was really drawn to the beauty and the difficulty of it, and just got kind of sucked into it towards my senior year of high school. And then I went to school in Colorado, and it just kind of like snowballed from there. And I just found myself on these long training rides. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Iowa, and I would just go on these long training rides through the cornfield on these what they're called farmer market roads. I would do these like long gravel rides before gravel was a thing on these little like stupid 23C tires that were just ridiculous. I'd always get pinch flats. It's so down, but just on these like Iowa back roads. Just found myself getting lost in it. And yeah, I don't know. I just kind of got pulled into cycling that way. And then one thing led to another. I found myself in college, just training and racing. I went to school in Durango, Colorado. I ended up in Durango, Colorado to go race bikes because I just got hooked on the sport. And yeah, started racing in college and started having some success on the collegiate level. And then, shortly after that, I got tied in with, so I was racing. I had type 1 diabetes. I think there was a connection where I got connected with Phil Sutherland. He was starting this all type 1 diabetes cycling team. And then it really just kind of, I got hooked and pulled into the sport. And so I was racing. I was like, definitely like I had ambitions to be a professional cyclist. And then I got tied in with Team Type 1 and it kind of snowballed from there and kind of hooked me for sure.
Do you remember like on Team Type 1, that first race that we did together that was absolutely wild based on everybody's experience levels in the Tour of Virginia?
It was wild. I mean, I remember I was pretty. I had good experience at that level of racing. I had done a lot of like U.S. crit stuff at that level at the like the Pro 1, 2, or I think that was just a Pro 1 level. In our NRC calendar stuff. I was pretty familiar with that level. That race sucked for me though, because in the first stage, whoever our mechanic was, he taped our tubulars up with that tufo tape stuff instead of actually like gluing the tires on like you were supposed to. And that first stage, man, it was a crit, and I rolled one of my front tubular off of the wheel, and in like a downhill corner going really fast, I ended up subluxing my shoulder, and so it was like popped out, and I popped it back in because a sublux instead of a dislocation going down and out, it goes like up and out, and so when you pull it down, it pops back in. And I ran to the like wheel change thing. I like got back in the race. I finished under the time zone, but I was like, my body did not. And I didn't end up finishing that race, unfortunately. Which that was like actually that race was leading up to the race across America, which was kind of our like that was our target race, right? And so early season Tour of Virginia, like I crash out, sublux my shoulder, I'm all banged up and super bummed out because I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to like recover in time to do race across America. And so yeah, I remember that race. The tubular story was kind of a bummer.
Not to bring up
people don't use those things anymore.
You'd be surprised.
If you do glue them and don't use those. Do they even have those tufo tapes, Justin, anymore?
The tape has gotten much better, and there are definitely still a lot of folks using tubulars, but I kind of grew up old school mechanic, so if they're not glued on, I'm not going to trust it either.
Yeah, well, I had my experience with the tapes, and I won't use them again. So anyways, that answers your question, but yeah, I remember that race because it did lead up to race across America, which was a cool experience in itself. So I did recover in time. I did race that race, and that was in 2007, and that was really cool because we, as a team of all type 1 diabetics, we won that race. Set a record for the fastest time that race had ever been raced, and that was really, really special because it kind of set a new message of what it looks like to have type 1 diabetes. And it was great. It was this positive, like, look what you can do. It was funny. We would go around and we'd talk to kids at camps and whatnot as professional bicycle racers. I say professional, kind of like, we weren't like Tour de France professional bike racers. We, very, very modest, very humble pro bike racers, really kind of just amateurs at an elite level is really what we should call ourselves. But anyways, it was cool because you'd still get to go talk to the kids at the camps and it was, I remember this, we kind of say this thing like, hey, people would be like, oh, how did you win that race? And I was like, what do you mean? We have the advantage. And, I think we kind of said that half joking, but half serious, like half kind of believed ourselves in that messaging. And it's kind of funny. You fast forward to today, and in the Tour de France, it's going on right now, and all the mountain climbs, all the times are falling. The race is faster than it's ever been before. And I heard this interview. I think it was like Bobby Jorek was interviewed. It was like being asked, like, why are the times faster now? Let's just assume that the racers aren't doping, and it's faster. All the times are faster than when the whole peloton was blood doping and everybody was on performance enhancing drugs. And so, what's the difference? And the comment is, well, we have a much better understanding of our nutrition because everybody's using CGMs now. Non-type 1 diabetics are actually seeing what their blood sugars are doing and how to refine and tweak and be better at the nutrition component. And so what we were saying is that, hey, we have the advantage. Look, we have control over our blood sugars, our insulin, we see exactly what's happening with our race and our recovery. And turns out that we weren't actually lying at all. We did have an advantage. We just didn't really fully understand to the extent that we had the advantage. And that kind of takes me to my analogy of driving the automatic. Like race cars aren't manual, or race cars aren't automatics and manuals, and that's who we are as type 1 diabetics. We're driving what could be a highly refined performance manual transmission.
Diagnosed with diabetes as an adolescent, college, went to school, started racing bikes, doing bikes. What did you, I assume at some point you transitioned out of pursuing the professional cycling dream and career. What did you end up transitioning into and why? And I know there's a bike company involved here that is your own. I'm curious what post pro Nathan with type 1 diabetes ended up finding himself doing.
Yeah, we can get into the bike company I'm launching. It's always kind of been diabetes and bikes for a long time. Like I said, I got sucked in high school into the sport of cycling. I was really pulled into the romance of the sport. I love the history. I love the machine itself, just the hand built bicycle, the soul of the craftsman that built these machines for these high level athletes to ride over miles and miles of terrain. And there's just something romantic about that. Before I got into building bicycles, I was just working in the outdoor industry. I was either a brand manager, building brands, or working on the sales side, doing just like sales rep stuff. But before the bike brand popped out, I came down with follicular lymphoma, cancer. And as you go through cancers, like cancers are kind of interesting. They kind of help you hyper focus on things that are important to you when you're going through situations like that. And one of them was, hey, I always wanted to build to understand the hand built bicycle world better. I actually started welding about 20 years ago with the intention to build bikes. So I've been into like fabrication for a long time. And when I was finished with cancer, and we can get into that because there's some diabetes related things with that story as well. But as you asked me what I'm doing now, and so there was a gentleman I knew in San Luis Obispo who'd been a highly regarded frame builder, and he'd been doing it for 40 years. His name's John Petter, and we were kind of acquaintances. I had his number on my phone, and so when I finished cancer, I just on a whim called him up, and I was like, "Hey, John, I don't know if you remember me, blah blah blah, Nathan Bartels." He said, "Oh yeah, I remember you." I was like, "Hey, would you teach me how to build bikes?" And it was like, to my surprise, he was like, "Yeah, that'd be great. Do you have any fabricating skills?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've been welding for a long time." He's like, "Oh, okay, cool." And so he took me under his wing and started teaching me some things about building bikes. And one thing led to another, and we started a company called SteroWorks, which is a hand built bicycle company. And one of the things that he's really talented at, he was actually a pack designer for the North Face for a long time, and then worked for Conrad Anker's Portledge company, and just a brilliant fabricator. We can get into his story a little bit too, but he ended up teaching me how to build and handle bicycles, and we started this bicycle company. And it's pretty cool because he, with his pack designs and rack making designs, we've got a fully integrated bike packing frame, rack, and design that's pretty exceptional. We won't get into that because this is a diabetes focused podcast. But that, to answer your question, Justin, yeah, I'm focused on
That's
this little
fascinating.
hand-built bicycle company called SteroWorks.
That's
this
that.
is a Nathan focus.
Yeah, this is Nathan. This is a
Oh,
Nathan
okay.
interview. So
Yeah,
Listen,
I
like,
think the listeners probably care more about the diabetes stuff. And I did drop the fact that I got into the bicycle building thing after cancer because it helped hyperfocus. And so
I have a question.
yeah,
I have a question there, real
and
late.
so I did have cancer, and there's some diabetes tricks and tips that I can share around that as well. So go for it.
a
What's your
teaser.
question?
So yeah, well, I was gonna say too, right? Like, I think the whole thing that we've been trying to say is like, diabetes is important to deal with and learn how to manage. But like, the cool part about it is like we all have all of these stories to tell outside of our diabetes experience, and we just use those experiences to learn how to be better at diabetes, and then in turn use diabetes to be better, or to use those, to use diabetes to then be better at our experience. You guys know what I'm saying? It's a whole cycle
It's
of,
synonymous with our day-to-day life, and our day-to-day
yeah,
lives are not just managing diabetes.
yeah, exactly. And I think I'm, despite knowing you for 18 years now, I'm learning a lot about how you approach things simply just from how you're talking about the way you're living your life. And one of those things is the way you phrased being done with cancer. Like, everybody I've ever heard ever in my life is like, I defeated cancer, I beat cancer. Is it? And you said you finished cancer.
I don't know.
Which
So there's
I think
something.
it's just
There's a funny. Yeah. So there's a researcher, a psychology researcher out of Harvard named Ellen Langer, and she talks about this same topic a lot. It's like how the wording you use, and one of the things that cancer survivors always they're told is like, oh, you're in remission, and she hates that terminology. She's like, no, you're not in remission. You're cured. You don't have cancer in your body anymore. And so to say that you're in remission is doing yourself a pretty large disservice because that actually adds stress. It's like, oh, I'm in cancer. My cancer is in remission. So I've still got cancer. It could come back at any time. And that actually creates stress. And so she says, like, no, you don't have cancer. It's just like me. I don't have cancer. And so it's like to say that you're in cancer remission is doing yourself a disservice because it adds unneeded stress onto the system. And, as we know as type 1 diabetics, to stack stress onto the system is not a good thing. And so it's kind of funny. And she's like, cancer might come back. But it's a different cancer. It's just like, you're not in remission. You finished cancer. So yeah, I don't know how I said I phrased it, but it's probably something to do with this. Like, oh yeah, I'm done with cancer. It's like, I beat that one. That one's over. The funny thing is too, the type of cancer that I have actually it's a low grade follicular lymphoma. It's actually a chronic cancer. And the reason they call it that is because you'll go through, 6 months of chemo. And a lot of times it will come back, in 5 years or so. My cancer is a good one because it's not one that is going to kill you quick. But it's one you'll probably die with, if that makes sense. And so one of the ways that I approach my cancer is that I was like, okay, let's dig into it. What is cancer? What's it feeding on? A lot of times cancers only feed on sugar and insulin. And so I went down this rabbit have a really good team of oncologists in my corner. My brother's, oddly enough, actually an oncologist. And so he helped me discover this. Yeah, right. Like lucky me. And we found this therapy that's like really kind of nuanced. Nobody really like it's super fringe. Like it's not really a mainstream cancer therapy, but it's actually called insulin potentiation therapy. And so what it actually does is that since the type of cancer I have, it's a low-grade follicular lymphoma. One of the hard things about it is that most often a lot of the cancer cells will be dormant when you're taking the chemotherapy. And so there's the insulin potentiation therapy, actually you take insulin with the chemo to wake up the dormant cells. And so that's what I did. I would fast leading up to chemo, and then I would increase insulin to really like wake up. And so what that would do is it would stimulate, it would like increase the metabolism of the cancer cells during the chemo. Basically, it wakes them up. There's lots of insulin, there's lots of sugar. The cancer cells are like, oh yeah, let's feed on that stuff. And it would wake up the potential dormant cells. They'd open them up, they'd be feeding on the insulin, feeding on the sugars, and also absorbing all the chemo that I was being administered at the time. Funny story.
That is
Funny,
absolutely fascinating.
funny story. So I used the manual operating system of my type 1 diabetes to increase the sugar and the insulin during the chemo to make sure that all the cancer cells were feeding and open and taking in all that chemo and being killed. And so it's been over 5 years now since finishing that round of chemo, and I do not have any cancer cells popping back up, which is kind of the time that you would start to see it. So fingers crossed that little nuanced therapy that I administered myself work. We'll see. So on a side note to that, I would in the infusion center that I was at, they had those little biscuit cookies, those little whatever cookies they give you on the planes. They had just like bowls of those things, and so I would just be pounding biscuit cookies as I'm like pounding insulin to wake up the cancer cells. And to this day, I cannot eat a biscuit cookie without getting sick. So I think that's kind of funny little side note to that. That little ordeal.
That's
So
incredibly fascinating.
again, I go back to this like, how do you use diabetes to your advantage? How do you use the fact that you've been given this opportunity to have all the control over how you deliver and administer and control the system? Because that's really what it is. I mean, it's if you really think about it, with how good the insulins are today and how quick they act, and how you can just watch the numbers on your smartwatch, where your numbers are. You are completely in control of the system. It's really like you are just driving a manual. And then what are the advantages that you can gain from that system? And I remember like a good buddy of mine who's a physician was using a CGM, non-type 1 diabetic, just a regular dude. We're in a CGM trying to figure out how they work and how his body responds to exercise and sugar and, blah, blah, blah. And, we were having a chat after he had some experiences and had some, different bonks. And he's like, oh man, Nathan, you gotta like talk to me about the takeaways. And he's like, oh, so these are the things I learned, but I guess that's different from, you because you're a type 1 diabetic. And I'm like, no, man, it's actually our bodies are responding the exact same way. It's just I'm driving a manual. You're stuck with a crappy automatic. And I say crappy automatic because, he had a situation where, he ate a bunch of pizza before playing in a rec soccer game. And what happened to him is that he ate a bunch of pizza. His body produced a bunch of insulin to deal with the pizza. And then he goes and he plays soccer and he has too much insulin on him. And he has a bonk. What I would have done as a type 1 diabetic, had I eaten a bunch of pizza before a bike race or a soccer game, I would not have taken the amount of insulin needed to manage that sugar load that I just brought in from the pizza, because I would have known I was going to go do an activity, and I would have been in a very short amount of time hypersensitive to the insulin. So I would have like tapered back. I would have let my blood sugar run high, and I would have had a walk. And so that's a quick example of how, you kind of can have an advantage driving your diabetes management with a manual system rather than being stuck with a crappy automatic.
Yeah, well, on a related and unrelated note, if I ate a bunch of pizza before going on a bike race, regardless of the insulin, I'd probably be puking. But that's slightly unrelated. But
But
I
not
think it is
bonking. But not bonking. That's the
not
key there.
bonking.
Yeah.
But I actually remember reading. Yeah, you wrote up that story at some point, and as I was getting ready for Unbound, after we started kind of getting this whole Instride thing together, that one really clicked with me. And that is literally the reason I started thinking, I'm like, wow, if I actually increase my insulin to a degree during the start of this race, I'll delay my glycogen release until later. And I just think, the fact that you brought it up here, like it's an interesting story, but like it also speaks to this community of people, like just sharing these stories, like trigger idea after idea after idea, and like a lot of cool things come out of that, right? And like, I don't think I could have possibly had a better blood sugar day on Unbound. Like, I don't think I've ever had a better blood sugar day in my life. And part of that was like starting this process because of hearing a random story about a guy that bonked after eating pizza, and like me thinking about like, how could I tweak my insulin to match the fact that this is a 13-hour bike race, and normally like I'm starting to feel pretty down after about 6.5 hours or 7 hours on the bike. Like, I don't know, it's just a little side note, but I just think it's a powerful thing when you get the community of people with diabetes together that can share these like ad hoc stories and just learn from it.
Yeah, it is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, that's
Yeah.
that's exactly why we're having this conversation. That's why we're doing this podcast. That's why InStride is a thing, because we're trying to share our tips and tricks and lessons learned. This again goes way back to when we first met 18 years ago.
And I want to learn lessons from other people as well.
The benefits we found from getting to be part of a group of elite athletes, all that shared this thing that we all had type 1 diabetes. And that was what, Alex, you and I had talked about, the true benefit that we got from that experience, is being able to just surround ourselves with a group of people with type 1 diabetes, getting after it on an athletic level, and just all the things we were learning from each other through the process of trying, missing, trying again, learning. Hey, what are you doing, Alex? What kind of, technology are you using? What kind of medicine are you using? What's your approach to this? What's your nutrition look like? And just learning from each other. And that's so valuable navigating a chronic disease like diabetes. And so that's why InStride's here. That's why we're trying to build tools and a community around learning and trying and becoming better with diabetes. Hey, guys, I got to take a pause real quick because I'm 56 right now, and I got to go grab a snack. I'll be right back. So as I'm chomping on a banana, this is a fun time to ask the classic type 1 diabetes, what's your favorite low food question? And mine is not necessarily a ripe banana, but that was the first thing I saw that had some sugar in it. And so I'm after the banana as my low food. But I will answer my own question, and my favorite low food is probably some sort of like gummy snack. So there's like the Swedish fish from Trader Joe's that are pretty delicious. And so that would rank right up there with my favorite low food.
Yeah, I was going to ask what variation of gummy snack, because there's a wide variety, and they vary a lot in texture, taste, and ranking in my book.
Yeah, yeah. So probably like the Harborough. Is that how you say that brand? Harborough.
Haribo,
I
Haribo.
don't think that's right. But like the gummy bears
Oh,
from that
it's
brand
yeah.
are those things are pretty good. But yeah, the Swedish fish from Trader Joe's rank right up there as well as one of my favorites.
I am not a fan of those gummy bears, being honest with you.
Hmm.
But maybe I'm just weird. I'm big on the like Welch's fruit snacks. Um,
Good
weirdly, when I
ones.
was a
Good
kid,
ones.
it was always Starburst because like one Starburst was 4 grams of carbs and like I could have a couple of them or whatever, right? To this day, I do not like Starburst. Like I'll eat them occasionally, but like I look at Starburst, I'm like, man, I can't do it. But
That's right.
also, I now have a toddler that every time I eat fruit snacks is like, I want fruit snacks. And then now we're constantly out of fruit snacks, which means I've been switching to powdered Gatorade a lot.
Oof, that effective, effective. I'd
And
probably go
hydrating.
true, true.
So one of the funny stories my wife will share and remind me of when I was racing at a higher level and training a lot. And so it was pretty common to wake up in the middle of the night and have to correct for low blood sugars. But one of the things she always would give me a hard time with, and I've talked to other type 1 diabetics and other teammates, and they would do the same thing. And I don't know if you guys have this experience, but I would wake up low, and it's pretty common for me to get into the peanut butter, and I would pound peanut butter, like spoonfuls of peanut butter. And she would wake up and she's like, "What are you doing? Man, there's not a lot of sugar in peanut butter. Why are you pounding peanut butter?" And I'm pretty sure I have other teammates and other type 1 diabetics that would also get into the peanut butter as one of their favorite low foods, even though peanut butter really does not have um, it does not really work that great for your blood sugar.
Yeah, no, I'm
But I
definitely
would
the same.
pound the peanut butter.
Yep,
Well,
same.
Justin, is peanut butter your favorite?
Alex,
What do what do you go with?
is peanut butter one of your go-to low
Um,
food?
we buy the cookie butter from Trader Joe's, and
Oh,
that is definitely it. And that does have a
da-
lot of sugar, which,
dangerous. Yeah,
yeah.
that stuff's
Anyway,
good.
Justin, we never
Ooh,
got to yours though.
yeah. Ooh, my favorite low snack. I mean, it's gonna be pretty classic because we all said gummy snacks, but I'm gonna have to say gummy snacks as well. The Swedish fish from Trader Joe's are up there. I don't know if they're the favorite though. I'd probably go for Nerds Clusters, which is a little more bizarre than anything, but it's got all the flavor and a bunch of sugar, so it hits the spot. That or Fanta. I'm a sucker for some Fanta.
You
That's
want a Fanta?
hard to. Yes, yes, I do. Actually, not enough. My blood sugar is good right now, so I don't. But
Maybe we
Fanta,
should make that song the intro to this podcast.
we could do that. We might have to deal with some licensing agreements, but I'm sure we can figure out something.
Or if at any point you go low while we're recording, like
That's the
you,
yeah.
you'll just play in the background while you're off screen.
Fair, fair. We can do that.
I love it.
But yeah,
So one of the other problems that one of my downfalls as a type 1 diabetic is I am not usually ever very well prepared as just like an everyday like having snacks on hand. And so
Dang.
my other favorite low food is my kids' snacks. And so I don't know if you guys, Alex, you as a father are this way as well, but I'm always stealing my kids' snacks, and this is one of theirs. It's just a little
I love that
roll.
I love that my daughter basically keeps me alive unintentionally because if we don't pack snacks for her, we're at risk of a meltdown at some point. So we always have snacks. And she's such a great kid. She doesn't tend to have those. Well, okay, that's she has
nice.
a lot of meltdowns. But like when we're out and about, like the meltdowns actually stay to a minimum. But if we're out walking around and I'm pushing the wagon, I'm gonna go low. And she's got a goldfish or whatever. I'm like,
Yeah. And
this is
so
way better
for
than my unprepared ass.
the people listening and not watching this, I am also eating some of my kids' fruit roll snacks.
Yeah, I don't have any kids to steal snacks from, so I just find a kid on the side of the road to steal them from. It works. It works.
It's like stealing candy from a baby.
Truly. I don't actually do that. That's pretty ruthless, and I'm not that evil of a person, I promise.
All right, so we have definitely derailed this conversation
Yeah.
with my little hypo. And it wasn't even that bad. I bottomed out at 53, and now I'm trending back up. So we are back on track, friends.
Nice. There we go. There we go.
And, but I know one other thing that we wanted to hit on before we end this thing, because we are cyclists, and you guys both, Justin and Alex, talked about your nutrition plans and how you're kind of handling racing and training, and you guys try to hit this kind of well, I think what the standard approach to training and racing is at a pretty high amount of carbohydrates during your race, and I kind of take a little bit different approach. I think because my goals are different, but also because there's just other ways of doing it. And I think one of the cool things that we should talk about is there's not one perfect way to manage your type 1 diabetes, one perfect nutrition plan that is the key that the listener should try to find. And it's just really kind of what works for you and what makes sense to you. I think the key is to take the approach of just, being positive about your diabetes management and realizing that it is a game, and, just being very much engaged with the process and learning from all the factors that affect your diabetes and how your body responds to all these little nuances. And the reason I bring that up is because with Justin and Alex both trying to consume 120 grams of carbs per hour, I actually do a lot of just like fasted training. And so trying to get into a state of my body running on stored energy in the form of ketones. And so one of the cool tools that diabetes have, or type 1 diabetics have access to, is blood ketone meters. And there's a lot of science behind, doing fasted workouts and fasted training to get your body efficient at burning stored fuels in the form of ketones. And so that's something that I've been really kind of fascinated at, and that's kind of been my approach. So I will go into workouts completely fasted and testing my blood ketones. And I will be burning like, 0.8 millimeter of, so I'm in a ketone state. I am burning ketones, but my blood sugars are not high. So I'm in like a standard, 120, 150 blood glucose, but but burning ketones. And so it's kind of been my fun little game and my approach. And, I'll basically roll into workouts completely fasting, burning ketones, blood sugars are dialed. So that's not a problem. And then just kind of roll into it at a fasted state. And so not pounding a ton of sugar, not pounding, trying to take a ton of insulin to match my 150 grams of sugar per hour approach. And that's been fun. It's been working. And I find good athletic performance from that. And so there are little nuances to try, but that's kind of been my approach. And there's a buddy of mine who's a researcher at the Samson Diabetes Clinic in Santa Barbara. His name's Andrew Kutnick, who has done a lot of research on ketones and athletic performance and fasting. And so it'd be fun to try to get him on the podcast in the future to try to unpack this science a little bit more and what he has to say. But the reason I bring it up and kind of talk about what I've been doing is not so much to say I'm right, you guys are wrong. It's just to show that there are other ways to approach nutrition and performance.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Nobody in the Tour de France is taking my approach, and it's definitely like for different reasons that I do this. And it's not for squeezing out the top level performance, because I think the sports science is in, and if you want to be at an elite level, like Justin does as a professional cyclist, you should definitely take his approach. But if you are just an everyday athlete and you're trying to be a healthy weekend warrior, there's definitely other methods and other approaches to nutrition and sports and performance.
That's a very cool and unique way of looking at it, and I think you nailed the point on the head there. Of there is not one right way that any of us living with type 1 diabetes are doing our own diabetes management, because it's different for everyone, for different goals, for different bodies, for different days, for everything. Um, it's and this might be a question for your friend, but it's very interesting to hear you talk about not necessarily training in a fasted state, but using the ketones in your body as fuel. Because I think as type 1 diabetics, or at least for me, when I was growing up, like as a young kid learning about diabetes, you hear ketones are what happen when your blood sugar is super high, and then you have to do your ketone protocol. And I think it's just inherently bad to hear ketones and diabetes in the same sentence. But ketones are not just this byproduct of super high blood sugars, and it'd be very interesting to dive further into that, either now or at
Yeah,
some
there's
point later.
definitely balance and nuance, right, Justin? So
Yeah.
what we've been taught as type 1 diabetics is like, oh, you're still in ketones, that means you're in a very unhealthy state. I remember that being just like a red
Hmm.
flag, right? And so
Yeah.
that's the very high levels of ketones. That's ketone acidosis. So that's like when your body's producing so many ketones that it's like acidic. And I think that's where you can get into like really, really dangerous levels. But there are definitely levels that are beneficial. I mean, your brain definitely like thrives on ketones. And really what ketones are, it's that body utilizing stored, breaking down stored fat for fuel. And there's like a whole science around it. If you're listening to, any of the popular podcasts that are covering the Tour de France right now, there's ketone sports drinks out there, because your body really utilizes ketones as a fuel source. And so ketone IQ is one of those drinks that professional athletes are taking, because ketones are fuel, and it's a really good fuel. And so to get your body to be able to run on ketones and manage those ketones is a really powerful way to do it as well. But obviously, blood sugar control is also very important in that regard as well. We're not talking about ketones being spilled because you're in the 400s for hours upon hours. We're talking about ketones because your body's breaking them down for fuel.
Yep.
I think what's interesting about the whole conversation too, right, is like when I was training for Unbound, I was focused on training my gut for the 120 grams of carbs an hour, because I knew that was going to be the only way I was going to be able to survive it. But like if I had more time and effort available to me, like I think implementing some fasting training would have been really good. So I could like also train my body to not need those glycogen stores, or utilize different sources at the beginning. So I think, as with everything, right? Like it's an it depends scenario. Like and there's a definite balance and use case for all these different methods, and fitting what thing you need to do in to meet your goals is kind of the overall like key, right? So
Yeah, Alex, and if you take this conversation, because I know you will, and you'll start consulting with ChatGPT and having it tell you the latest research is on fasted training, what it will tell you is that it's kind of like if you think about like altitude training, you sleep high, you train low, to get the biggest benefits, and the fasted training is very similar to that. So when you train fasted in like a zone 2, to get your body efficient at burning stored fuels, utilizing fats for fuel. And, you become more efficient, your metabolism becomes better at doing that. But you want to train not fasted, right? You want to go when you're trying to hit high level output. You want to be totally topped off with your glycogen stores, and so. But anyways, that whole like train fasted is actually a technique to get your body to use those stored fuels, the stored fat, so it doesn't just naturally tap into the glycogen stores. So it is a way to prolong those stored glycogen stores. And so
what do I
so,
use
yeah.
ChatGPT for? Like, I think you just gave me
I was messy. Like I said, I need to bring in Andrew Kutnick. He's a type 1 diabetic too, so he really understands this stuff really well. He's a PhD.
I mean, that'd be fascinating.
So I'll have to reach him out, reach out to him. We might have to have a conversation just on this topic because it's a fun one as well.
Well, you might be interested to know I actually did have this conversation about 5 months ago with ChatGPT because I was like having an issue with sweet spot training, and I was like, "This is really hard." It turns out I was just really sick, and I didn't know it yet.
Yeah.
It was coming.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Did I go overboard on this sugar training, basically?" And it was like, "Well, yeah, let's integrate this because here's how this works." Interesting. But no, I think we should definitely have him on if he's willing to do that.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Definitely, like down the road. I want to interview you guys first, but yeah, it'll be on the list as something we can knock on the door of. He's a pretty interesting guy and pretty sharp, so we can unpack this topic a little more.
Well, on that awesome cliffhanger, I feel like we've talked for a really long time, and people probably want to just hear switch at this point.
Yeah, both listeners and the interviewers. Yeah. So
I think we were able to get into the weeds a little bit. Again, I think the whole goal of this is to let other type 1 diabetics just like be pulled into the conversation and hear what people are doing and what they're trying, what successes they're having, what failures they're having, and what therapies they're using, the whys behind it. It's fun. Again, I think what it does more than anything is it engages you in the process, right? I mean, I find myself, my diabetes is best when I'm paying attention. And I think by surrounding yourself by other type 1 diabetics, by at least just paying attention to what's going on, it just makes us all better.
And on a related note, we got to have our
what's
blood sugar readout.
What are the BGs? I am 115 arrow across. Nathan,
how'd you come up?
Mine says I'm 62 right now, but I think there's a lag there. I did where's my blood sugar meter? I think if I took a blood draw, I think I'd be right at like 90.
I don't know. Mm-hmm. I would say either you are insanely passionate about everything we've talked about, which is probably true, or still doing a little bit of low talking.
Yeah. No. So I'm 62. I'm 62. So Justin's ahead of me on this one. That's too low. You don't want to be 62. That's not a good success number.
Justin, you win this time. I am 124.
Oh, okay. Whoa. So actually, no. I think you. So if we're saying 120 is the goal number, then you're closer than I am.
No, I
thought I was 100.
Is it 100?
No, 99 is the target number.
No, okay, 99.
All the advertisements of the. Do you remember like the?
Yeah.
They were always 99.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
so it's the marketing driven goal number. It's 99.
Fair. All right, then I'll take this win. Woohoo!
Nice guys, that was fun.
Might work.